Imagine two men sitting alone. Same posture, same stillness, same expression on their faces, kind of quiet detachment, as though they are watching something that isn't there. One of them is sitting on a bench in a public park on a warm afternoon. Children move nearby. Pigeons reorganize themselves unhurriedly on a footpath. A woman walks a dog that keeps stopping to investigate the grass. The man on the bench fits into all of this the way punctuation fits into a sentence use. Don't notice it, but without it, something would feel wrong. He belongs not because he has done anything to earn belonging, but because the environment has quietly extended it to him. The place has written him in. The second man is sitting in the lobby of a private office building. The floors are polished. The air carries the faint chemical neutrality of climate control. A receptionist sits behind a curved desk and occasionally glances up without moving her head. People who belong in this space move through it efficiently. They do not linger, do not pause without purpose, do not sit without an appointment. They arrive, they check in, they leave for the elevator. The man in the chair is doing nothing the park man isn't doing. But here, his stillness is a disruption. The receptionist looks at him again. A security guard near the door shifts his weight almost imperceptibly. No one has said anything. Nothing visible has changed. And yet the man in the lobby is already in a different situation than the man in the park, not because of what he is doing, but because of where he is doing it. This is where most people stop looking. They look at the person, they look at the behavior. They ask what someone did, not where they did it. But the environment was already there before the person arrived. The environment had already decided what was normal, what was acceptable, what was expected, and when the person walked in, they either matched those expectations or they didn't. The action came second. The space spoke first. Every place has a grammar. Not a written one, not one anyone teaches you, but one you absorb almost instantly upon entering a set of invisible rules about pace and posture, about volume and movement, about when to make eye contact and when to look away. You learn the grammar of a library before you've sat down. You learn the grammar of a nightclub before you've reached the bar. Something in the body adjusts automatically, recalibrating to match the frequency of the room. The way a tuning fork placed near another will begin to hum at the same pitch. This is not a conscious process. You don't stand in the doorway of a cathedral and think, I will now slow my steps and soften my voice. You just do it. The space compels it, and if you don't do it tiff, you walk through a cathedral at the pace you walk through a train station. Speaking at the volume you use on a busy street, you will be noticed. Not because anyone is watching for you specifically, but because you broke the rhythm, and rhythm, when it breaks, makes a sound. Attention in human beings is not a continuous beam sweeping the environment for anything of interest. It is reactive, triggered, economical. The mind does not want to process everything that would be exhausting. What it wants is pattern. It wants the familiar, steady hum of a context that matches its expectations. And when that hum is interrupted, attention arrives like a reflex. A door opens in a quiet room. A phone rings in a place where phones don't ring. Someone laughs too loudly at a funeral. The interruption doesn't have to be dramatic, doesn't have to be wrong even. It just has to break the pattern to introduce a frequency the environment wasn't producing in suddenly. Eyes move, posture shifts, awareness sharpens without permission. This is the deep function of noticing. It is a warning system, ancient and precise, that evolved not to find things of interest, but to find things that don't belong. And belonging in this context is not about people. It is about patterns. It is about whether a thing, a sound, a movement, a presence fits the grammar of the space it has entered. This is why a crowded place offers a different kind of protection than an empty one, and it is not simply the protection of numbers. A busy market, a packed station, a dense urban street corner. These are high-noise environments in a perceptual sense. There is too much happening for any single element to demand sustained attention. Movement is continuous, overlapping, unpredictable in its variety. Sound is layered. Visual complexity is high. In these environments, individual behavior loses much of its signal. You can stop on a pavement and look at a building and no one marks it. You can enter a shop and leave without buying anything and no one remembers you were there. The noise of the environment absorbs you. Your presence becomes part of the background, and the background is, by definition, unnoticed. But take that same behavior standing still, watching something, entering, and not buying into a low-noise environment, and the mathematics of attention change entirely. In a quiet corridor, a small shop, a waiting room with 4 chairs, the environment has very little happening in it. What is present stands out simply by existing. There is nothing else to look at. The signal-to-noise ratio shifts so dramatically that the mildest deviation from expected behavior, slight hesitation, an unnecessary return, a glance held half a second too long becomes, in that space, an event. Consider how a hardware store on a Saturday morning operates. It is full of people with an enormous variety of purposes. Someone is measuring pipe fittings. Someone is choosing between 2 shades of paint that appear identical. A child is being kept from touching things that are expensive or sharp. Someone is asking a staff member a question neither of them fully understands. In this environment, there is no baseline of behavior against which an individual can be meaningfully measured. Anyone can be anywhere, doing anything for any legitimate reason. Access is open. Purpose is assumed. Presence carries no inherent meaning because everyone's presence is already meaningful, already justified by the mere act of having entered. Now, imagine an airport terminal after the last flight has departed. The same space, the same seats, the same architecture, but now it is nearly empty. The noise is gone, and the few remaining people are staff with visible roles. A single civilian moving through that terminal would not need to do anything unusual to attract sustained attention. Their presence alone unexplained, without visible purpose, would be enough. Access had become significant. The space had shifted its logic. The building hadn't changed, but its relationship to presence had transformed completely, and with it, the weight that any movement inside it carried. What spaces do to movement is one of their most powerful and least examined functions. People think of space as a container and neutral volume in which things happen. But space is not neutral. Space is opinionated. Space has preferences, and it expresses them architecturally, channeling people in directions it finds acceptable. Discouraging deviations, not through force, but through design. A narrow corridor gives you one meaningful choice: forward or back. It is not a physical constraint in the way a locked door is, but it functions as one psychologically. You don't think about turning left in a corridor that has no left turn. The option doesn't register. The architecture has already made the decision, before you arrived, before you were even aware a decision was being made. Open plazas, by contrast, seem to offer freedom. They expand in all directions, and nothing stops you from crossing them any way you choose. But even open spaces channel behavior. People do not walk randomly across large squares. They follow desire lines, paths worn into grass or stone by generations of people, all choosing the same diagonal, all following the logic of the shortest route to the most common destination. The freedom was real, technically, but the behavior converged anyway because the environment's underlying logic, the placement of exits, the position of obstacles, the geometry of adjacencies was quietly shaping every apparently free choice. Restricted access changes everything about how a space is perceived. And it changes everything about how presence is interpreted within it. In a space that anyone can enter, being there says nothing about who you are. In a space that requires authorization to enter, being there is itself information. It announces something, and the absence of a clear announcement arriving in a restricted space without an obvious reason is a disruption of the spaces. Grammar far more powerful than anything you could do while standing in it. This is not merely a matter of rules. It is a matter of perceptual logic, The environment has signaled that not everyone belongs here, and your arrival has made a claim that will be tested automatically, unconsciously, by everyone who sees you. You don't have to do anything suspicious. Your mere presence in a space whose logic says presence is selective is itself an event that requires interpretation. And people who are uncertain how to interpret something, who cannot fit it into the existing pattern, watch more closely. They wait. They continue to gather information because the information they have is not yet sufficient to resolve the uncertainty you created simply by entering. There is a quality of space that might be called visibility amplification, the degree to which a particular environment magnifies the significance of what happens inside it. A cathedral amplifies stillness. A boardroom amplifies hesitation. A gallery amplifies the act of looking. An emergency room amplifies urgency. In each case, the space is doing something to the behaviors performed within it, not merely providing a backdrop for them. A man who glances repeatedly at his watch in a park reads as someone with a meeting. The same man, the same gesture, repeated with the same frequency, in a surgery waiting room reads as someone in private agony. The watch glance is identical. The space has changed its meaning entirely. This is the phenomenon that people who think only about behavior consistently fail to account for. Behavior is not a self-contained unit of meaning. It is always in dialogue with its environment, and the environment always has the louder voice. Familiarity with a space is itself a kind of power, and its absence is a kind of vulnerability. When you enter a place you know, a neighborhood you grew up in, an office you've worked in for years, a building you have navigated so many times that your body knows the turns before your mind gives the instruction, your behavior becomes fluid, efficient, and unremarkable. You move at the pace of the space. You know where to go. You carry none of the small signals of uncertainty, the slight hesitation at a junction, the glance upward to read a sign, the fraction of a second pause before choosing a direction. These signals are not large. They are almost invisible. But they exist, and experienced observers, security personnel, shopkeepers, anyone who spends extended time in a specific environment treat them fluently. The unfamiliar person is slightly slower, slightly more deliberate. Their head moves differently. Their eyes scan rather than settle. Their body is doing the work of processing a space that familiar occupants navigate by memory, and the effort of that processing is legible faintly to anyone who has nothing else to read but the space and the people in it. Unfamiliarity also changes the person themselves from the inside. Enter a space you don't know and notice what happens to your own perception. It sharpens. You take in more information per second than you would in a familiar environment. It's because familiar environments have been compressed by experience into manageable shortcuts. You know what to expect, so you stop actively perceiving most of it. Unfamiliar space refuses compression. It insists on being noticed, forces your attention into the present tense, slows your movement as your brain attempts to build an adequate model of where you are and what the rules are. This heightening of perception is automatic, unasked for, a product of the nervous system's honest recognition that it is operating without a sufficient map. And while it increases awareness, it also increases visible uncertainty. Visible uncertainty in controlled environments is information that others will use. The relationship between environment and behavior is not metaphorical. It is physiological. Ceiling height affects abstract thinking. Studies have shown that higher ceilings correlate with more expansive, conceptual cognition, while lower ceilings push thought toward the concrete and specific. Ambient noise at moderate levels can enhance creative output, while silence can inhibit it in people who associate quiet with surveillance. Lighting temperature affects alertness and social openness. The hardness or softness of a surface you are sitting on affects how rigidly or flexibly you evaluate social situations. The mere presence of natural elements like plants. The visible outdoors reduces cortisol and measurably shifts decision-making toward patience and generosity. These are not small or theoretical effects. They are consistent, replicable, documented. The environment is not merely a backdrop within which you make free and autonomous decisions. The environment is a participant in your decision-making, pulling variables you cannot see, adjusting the conditions under which your choices arise, setting the temperature of the room in which your judgment forms. And yet, almost no one accounts for this. Almost no one, in the moment of making a choice or reading a situation, thinks to ask, what is this environment doing to me right now? What has this space already decided? What has the layout, the lighting, the noise level, the visibility, the access, the familiarity of this place already shaped before I arrived at this moment of apparent choice? The question doesn't arise naturally because the influence doesn't feel like influence. It feels like reality. The slowness you feel in a formal space feels like appropriate caution. The ease you feel in a familiar environment feels like competence. The discomfort you feel in a space where you look out of place feels like personal inadequacy rather than environmental friction. The space has made its adjustments to you in a register below consciousness, and what rises into consciousness is only the residue of the feeling, the impulse, the decision stripped of the environmental cause that produced it. This is why people who understand environments have access to a layer of the world that most people don't know exists. It's not a mystical layer, a structural one. They see spaces not just as places, but as systems, as sets of rules, pressures, affordances, and constraints that are actively shaping the behavior of everyone inside them, continuously, silently, and without appeal. They look at a crowd and see not just people, but a flow, a pattern, a set of movement tendencies produced by the architecture and the social norms of that specific environment. They look at a controlled space and immediately understand which behaviors will read as neutral and which will immediately acquire significance. They look at a transition, a doorway, a checkpoint, an entrance from open to restricted, and understand that the person passing through it is undergoing a shift not just in location, but in the interpretive frame through which they will now be seen. They understand that environments are not neutral, that no space is a blank stage, and that the most consequential variable in almost any situation is not what people do, but where they do it, and what that where has already said about what is normal, expected, and permissible before a single action is taken. Pressure, in this sense, is not something environments generate through force or explicit threat. They generate it through the combination of visibility, limitation, and expectation. A space that can see you exerts pressure. A space that limits where you can go exerts pressure. A space that has clear expectations about how people behave within it exerts pressure. And these three pressures, operating together, shape behavior more reliably and more comprehensively than most explicit instructions ever could. You don't have to tell people how to behave in a courtroom. The space tells them. The elevated bench, the formality of the furniture, the arrangement of bodies in relation to each other, the silence, the procedural rhythm, all of it communicates with extraordinary precision and force exactly what is expected. And people comply, not because they have been threatened with non-compliance, but because the environment has made non-compliance feel profoundly abnormal. The space has defined what is possible, and what is possible has silently defined what people do. Most mistakes, operational ones, social ones, strategic ones, happen because someone focused on the action and forgot the environment. They planned what to do and not where to do it. They evaluated a behavior in the abstract and failed to imagine how that same behavior would read in the specific environment in which it was going to occur. They thought about what they were going to say and forgot that the room in which they said it would amplify or diminish it, contextualize it, frame it for everyone present in ways over which they had no control. The environment is always cothering the situation. The person who overlooks this is working with an incomplete picture, in fact. That is missing its most important element, because the environment is not just the background. It is the framing, the lighting, the acoustic, the grammar, the expectation, and the first impression all at once, before anyone has done a single thing. Understanding this fully, not as an interesting idea, but as a lived perception, changes the way you move through the world. You begin to read spaces before you act within them. You feel the rhythm of a place and locate yourself within it or outside it with a new precision. You notice when you are visible and when you are absorbed. You understand when your presence alone is information and when it is background noise. You feel the pressure of structured environments and understand its source. You notice when an environment is channeling your choices and you become for a moment aware of the channel itself rather than merely flowing through it. You see the invisible grammar, feel the unwritten rules, hear the expectations that space is broadcast at frequencies just below conscious perception. And once you have seen it, you cannot stop seeing it. The park bench and the lobby chair will never look the same again. The crowded street and the empty corridor will never carry the same weight. You will walk into a room and you will feel immediately and without effort what that room is doing to you, to everyone in it, to the situation itself, and you will understand that this was always happening in every room, in every space, in every moment of every day, long before you learned to look for it. The world is made of places, and places are made of rules, and the rules were always there. Quietly deciding everything, waiting only for someone to notice them.